Hi there, welcome to Nonsense Whisky. My name's been PF, and on today's episode I'm going to have to ask your forgiveness for your indulgence in a dram that I don't think many of you will get to try, unfortunately. This little thing here, I was recently sent this by Douglas Lang & Co, and this is the Extra Old Particular, or XOP Cambus 35 years, 55.1%. Now, we'll get onto the whisky itself in a second, but this gives me a good opportunity to talk to you a little bit about the Cambus distillery, which I'll wager quite a few of you probably have never even heard of. I hadn't heard of it until this came through the post. Cambus Distillery is a single grain, or was a single grain distillery, that was closed, unfortunately. It's now owned by sort of Diageo, and they closed it in the 90s, and it's turned into a cooperage and warehouse. So Cambus Distillery was founded in the 1800s, had a long history. It went through the Distillers Company Limited, which, as we know, turned into United Distillers and eventually into Diageo. Unfortunately, in a restructure, they closed it, but it's still being released by independent bottlers, just like this one over here. Very interesting to see some closed distillery stuff. This, as I said at the start, is a 35-year-old whiskey. Now, when somebody gets in touch with you and says, would you like to try something that's older than you are, you jump at the chance, right? So that's what I did, and this has come through for me. Distilled in 1982, bottled in 2018, so it's a fresh release from them. It's unfortunately quite expensive. It's not the most expensive thing I've covered on the channel, thankfully. Comes in the UK at around £235, and you can still get bottles of this on Master of Malt. Now, I know that some rules have changed in the last few years, and you guys in America can't get stuff off Master of Malt anymore, so unfortunately I don't think you're going to see this, but if you can get it, maybe it's worth a go if you're into this sort of thing. Now, I'm pretty sure I said earlier, but single grain, very important to note, single grain, which is why it's cheaper than what a 35-year-old Scotch single malt would be. Scotch single grain tends to be cheaper, less desirable, but for me, something amazing happens to single grain whiskies when it's been in a cask for over 21 years and above. Now, I recently covered, well I say recently, it's probably quite a while ago now, but up in the corner there is an Old Particular Douglas Lang Strathclyde 25, absolutely sublime, and that cost me around sort of £50–60, I can't remember the exact price. So the extra 10 years on that has bumped this up quite a lot, you know, not to be confused with the same distillery because it really isn't, but this is the Extra Old Particular range. Very interesting. Only 255 bottles of this were made. Thankfully, it's ended up in my lap, so let's have a little nose and see what we've got, shall we? Oh, amazing. It's got this amazing sweet creamy nose to it. It's not like, it's definitely sugary sweet, but it's not over the top or in your face or anything like that. But for me, there's also a mixture of kind of dark fruits in there, cherries, that sort of thing. It's almost like a pudding, you know, it's like a dessert pudding or something like that. Really nice. I should say as well, before I move on to the palate, this was actually sat out on the side for a very long time. As soon as I saw the 35-year-old age statement on it, and the fact that it's grain, top tip from me is if you've got any grain whatsoever, forget the kind of basic 3–4-year-old stuff like Hay Club and things like that. Nah. Well-aged grain, make sure you put it out on the side and let it breathe for a bit, because it's very important to get any enjoyment out of these things, especially when they're high ABV. 55.1 this is, so it's going to get straight up your nose if you take a neck pull immediately. So this was sat underneath my my Aqua Vitae coin. Let's move on to the palate. Now it's got this amazing warming quality to it. Initially, it doesn't feel like there's much depth to it, but you've got to spend some time with this thing. It's got a massive oak influence, like you can imagine. 35 years sitting in this barrel, one single barrel of refill hogshead, so it's really had some time to mix in with this stuff. Initially, it's quite sweet, but again, not overly so. You know, we're not talking about, covered the Jack Daniel's honey recently, sickeningly sweet, but I quite enjoy that kind of thing. So I just want to make sure that you guys understand that when I'm saying it's sweet, I'm not saying it's sweet like really sweet like I like it, but it's sweet like most people will like it. And it's got this amazing finish on it as well. It's really long and spicy. Definitely one to sit and savour and enjoy. I mean, it was thanks to Douglas Lang. When I picked this bottle up, like I say, about 65 quid I think I spent on that. I picked that up at the House of Malt when I went to go and see Maltman Mike and friends. Absolutely incredible whiskey, and it really opened my mind to the worlds of grain. And I implore any of you watching this, if you're even remotely into whiskey and you've been turning your nose up at single grains, try and find something like this. And this, maybe not this, it's a bit expensive. Very hard for me to recommend when it's well over £200, but if you've got that sort of money sitting around, it's well worth every penny, in my opinion. I would happily buy a bottle of this if I happen to see one. I mean, it's on Master of Malt, but I don't tend to be in the purchasing mood for kind of Master of Malt stuff at the moment. Still reeling from Christmas, bless me. It's a hard life, right? I've only got a tiny bit left now, so I'm going to really enjoy that, but absolutely fabulous stuff. Yeah, I definitely implore you all to try some single grain stuff that's been well aged and released by an independent bottler. Thumbs up. It went through, bottled in